I'm going to talk about the value of rapport and how rapport is so important, and it's not just something that should be glossed over and something that only happens at one part of the sales process. I kind of want to talk about that.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so I will reference some notes every once in a while, but I think that when I think of rapport right away, I think of the word trust. So I think of the fact that in order for us to be able to get someone to go forward with us, we have to gain some trust, right? So, the idea of if someone's coming into your house, if you're a homeowner, or if you're going to go forward with, buying a website from us or something like that, you got to have trust that not only that the system works, but you also got to trust in the person as well. And, you got to, that trust is not easily gained, right? So on the calls that I have on a regular basis, I just find out that very candidly that people who already have knowledge of us, already have, been exposed to us, that trust is there.
So like the people listening to the podcast right now, the trust is a hell of a lot higher versus somebody that comes in from a Facebook ad or they found our information somewhere else.
That's 100% correct. So like someone who has now seen us in some other space, the idea is, well, these guys got their stuff together. They know what they're talking about. Something they said already resonates with me. And so they built this trust up with them. So that's super important. I do apologize about, looking down at my phone real quick.
So that's something that I know for me, like whenever I talk to somebody, we've talked about this before, is if somebody reaches out, and I know with you, because you did that podcast, a few weeks ago, and it was, you joined in and somebody on the phone said like, yep, I've heard your podcast, Chris. Like for you, I remember I asked you specifically, like, how did you feel when you heard the person said that they already knew a bit about your story and who you were? How did you feel when you heard that? And what do you think that did for your confidence on the sales call?
I felt I wouldn't say powerful, but I felt like very confident, and maybe it was powerful in a sense. I think that I don't want to shy away from that idea. I didn't feel like I was powerful over them, but I felt powerful like in my own self. And then also when they told me that, I was just like, wow, maybe something I had to say could resonate with someone else. And so I felt comfortable going into the conversation. It didn't feel like I was having to sell them on who I was too. Mm-hmm. That part made it seem like it had already been done.
It's the idea like your reputation like precedes you.
Yeah.
So if somebody like, in your world, guys, like if you think about like somebody comes in and says, yep, I want a new patio, versus somebody comes in and says, hey, I was at one of your old clients who's my friend. I was at their house on their patio and it was great. And I checked out your reviews and I see that you have 45 5-star reviews. I want to talk to you about a patio. Those are two completely different conversations, because one's coming in already understanding, and we're just talking about like a patio here. Like imagine if they see your content online, which is going to be helpful stuff, that trust factor goes so much higher. The same way that when somebody calls us from the podcast, from YouTube, from somewhere where they've heard not just what we do, but more so our mindset behind things, they're buying into the system that we have developed, not just like the end product, if you will.
That's so true.
I know.
I think that's what's funny about all of that is we talked about like, what do people say whenever they got like, I happen to have been, in the military, and that's something that I don't really love to like lean into.
Why?
Because my military experience was always the idea of being a silent professional. And so got to do some cool stuff, got to be part of some special operations units and whatnot, but it was always like, I'm not going to go around shaking some sticks saying, hey, this is what I give you a hard time. I give, all people in the Navy and the SEALs a hard time. There's a joke that says, how do you know someone's a SEAL?
They'll tell you?
They'll tell you.
Yeah.
Exactly. So like, and that's one thing that I'm not saying that's anything bad, because, SEALs do an absolutely hell of a job of what they do. And there's no one better.
But in that community, it's also, you're supposed to, it's the same idea. Like if you come out, and just so everybody knows, if this is their first podcast, I wasn't a SEAL. I went in for it, didn't make it through one of the training programs in Hell Week, and that was that. So just a little caveat, don't come at me, throwing out military acronyms that I'm not going to know on our call. So, but in that case, it was very obvious that anybody who was, in the teams that came out and wrote a book, they were pretty much like scolded. Like, you just like, they just didn't like them, because they came out and like profited off of this, which when you're in it, I'm like, oh, that makes total sense. Like, screw that guy. But then like when you come out, you realize like, you have an option.
That perspective is valuable still.
It's like now that you're on the other side, you did all this amazing stuff. That's a cool ass story that a lot of people want to hear, and you can either keep that to yourself and die with it on your deathbed, or you can do this and make a lot of money while you do it. So like, when you're in it, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But now in post, when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I get why they did it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still in that headspace where I'm just not, it doesn't, I don't really love the idea of just me talking about it all the time.
And you don't have to like be braggadocious about it, but like, if I say like, what'd you do in the Army? And if you're like, yeah, I just did a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I'm like, no, Chris, like, what'd you do? And you're like, I did some special, like, you can drop the R word. Like, people, as long as you're not doing it in the wrong way, it's like when you go to Harvard, you don't walk around saying like, hey, my name's Harvard Chris, but you can like, if I'm like, Chris, where'd you go to school? And you're like, I went to a school in Boston. Oh, which one? Oh, just one of them. Like, just answer the damn question. And by the way, Chris did not go to Harvard.
Yeah, that's funny.
But he can spell it, so that counts.
Exactly. Backwards too. So I'm not really there with that whole idea, but it did make me feel good, and let's say this week we've had a pretty good week, right? And this week, 2 people have already hit me up and like, oh, they have some type of Ranger affiliation, right? They either know something about it or they happen to be one at some point in their life, and that's cool, and I would love to help out anyone who has not only those that, I want to help out all people, but I feel like I have a certain place in my heart for people that, have had a similar walk of life than I have.
Sure.
So, but kind of going back to rapport and how valuable I think that is, one thing I really noticed, and you kind of harped on me about it originally, was the idea of what's your responsibility as in sales when it comes to rapport, and like you're kind of gauged on how much information and how much diagnosis you can do of someone in your initial meeting, and that's done through conversation that's like 70, 30, 80, 20, making sure that that customer, that homeowner, that client is heard and is felt, and they're doing the talking. So that's something that I thought it makes all the sense in the world, but I recognize that many people don't get it. Like, I'm still talking to people out there who are talking about how they throw up or how they talk about they do all these things to their clients. And, it's not only do they do it out there in the home, but they're also doing it on their website and every other portion of marketing they're putting out. So that was it's still kind of crazy to think about that people don't understand that concept.
At the same time, though, like most people, that's all you want in life is to feel heard. Charlotte is having a very large homeless problem right now, which is not common for Charlotte. And compared to like the big, San Diego, San Francisco, both places where I used to live, this is nothing compared to those, but it's new to Charlotte. So one of the things that they came out with was an article, and they talked about like, it's great if you want to donate tents, if you want to donate food, if you want to donate money, but what they really want is they just want to feel like human beings. They want to feel like somebody is listening to them. And I know that there's a guy in one of the CSA programs named Bobby, and he was talking about when, he's doing the 75 hard, which part of it is he walks, for at least 45 minutes. And he said he just started talking to a homeless person, and at the end gave him like $20. And I remember like reading it and just like responding, saying like, the $20 is great, but I bet you the fact that you spent that much time listening to this person, that is what they're going to remember. Not the $20 that you gave them, but the fact that you just humanized them again. And this is what we all forget when it comes to selling, is that we are the expert. We have all the answers. They need to shut up because we're the ones that know what we're doing. But in reality, like we know that we're the expert. They probably know that we're the expert. But like, I'm like, when we do stuff, I'm still like, we still do these kickoff calls with contractors. And for the most part, I know why their clients are buying from them. I know, why somebody's going to remodel their kitchen. I know why somebody wants to get their pond cleaned or their bathroom painted. But I need the contractor to reaffirm with me because it's that trust piece. Because if I just say, yep, I'll build your website, see you in 2 weeks, and we get it wrong, well, now we're stuck.